certainly decisive for me. The first book of poetry that I discovered for myself in the buying of it was Bob Creeley's For Love, and then he was to become a friend of a lifetime. I met Olson and spent time with him when he'd come back from Buffalo after his young wife had been killed in an auto accident driving home from the grocery store. And Olson could be visited, a terrific, vivid presence who often spoke with great incoherence, and it didn't matter at all. When you were with him, you felt that what you were doing mattered, that this was going to be an important adventure and endeavor, and growing up as a middle-class kid in a doctor's family. I certainly needed that. Off and on, I've written about Black Mountain. I've never been there. I read it at Dorothea Rockburn the other night, and we were talking about it. The place comes up. Something that I think about it, that I was thinking about in the Loft Project exhibition. I was 18 in 1960, beginning to find my way, partially because I had a teacher in prep school who knew Pollock, who introduced me to the work of Frank O'Hara, who introduced me to painters. It does not make people who grew up in that time noble that it was harder to find stuff than it is today. Maybe the plethora of things that are out there today makes it more difficult to find it. I don't know, but Black Mountain seemed to me at that point a discovery, and kept on being a discovery, and of course it was a tiny place. We're talking about a place that turned the arts in this world, whether it's Merce Cunningham or Buckminster Fuller or Rauschenberg was there, Twombly, de Kooning taught there, Franz Klein, Joseph Albers, Annie Albers was there. Very small number of people. I've always taken that as a matter of faith. It may be a slender thread. It doesn't have to be a hawser. One of us can do it. And Black Mountain has meant that to me to this day.
I guess I would, how great that we can talk about this place because we are here and we're near there, and it's interesting to be in a geographic setting where the first thing you say is something different, and because in New York it would be New York School, it would be language poetry, it would be and also the idea of writers and artists going away. I mean, my family took summer vacations. We too went away for the summer and went someplace. But there's this idea of kind of poetic, artistic pilgrimage where there were places where people would go to be in context, to be in a group, to choose to be together, and to be poets with visual artists and sound artists and John Cage and music, and to always think of poetry as written in a context. And I think one of the first things I discovered when I was like a young poet was that people knew each other. I didn't know before I left, I grew up in Boston before, I had some friends that we would ride around in cars drinking beers and talking about being writers, and we kind of wrote a little bit, but we didn't know any other writers except the people we talked with about this amazing future in which we would be writers. And when I got to New York, I was sort of shocked that people could say that all their friends were writers, and I almost thought there was something wrong with that. Like, don't you want to know any other people? Did you just get rid of all the ones that weren't writers? And to understand that part of being a writer was having, at least for a time, because I think sometimes then we want to get away from that community of writers, but that part of the evolution of being a writer and artist was knowing people and having a context and learning from your friends. And one of the things I've noticed, maybe even a conflict in terms of writers in relationship to people who work in the media, is that a lot of people, like say, you see young people who come to, you start to be a person who lives someplace, and you start to watch waves of younger people coming to town and their thoughts about the place they're in. And that one of the things they didn't have increasingly over time was a sense that the people who were your friends were the people. you know, it wasn't some other people. You didn't have to go, you know, you didn't have to go outside of your circles of friends. That actually the kinship bonds were how art was made, and that writing and art was a code between communities of people who knew each other, that art was an exercise in intimacy in a way, and it was a code for communities, and that's what we were doing together, was making new codes, and then needing to flee those codes, you know, that they become kind of claustrophobic, and you need to, in order to make new moves, you need to go to fresh places and meet fresh people, and even get outside this kind of art-making context.